Here's to whiskey kisses, the peaty taste of sin, an Ardmore morning with the smell of brew.
Greetings, whiskey folk, and welcome back to Drinking Out Loud. I am your host, Adam Bradshaw, and this is the very start of a very exciting set of tastings that we're going to be doing here on the Dram Association YouTube channel in conjunction with the Victoria Whisky Festival 2021, the festival that never happened, but it'll still happen somewhere, you know, in your own home, in your own heart at least. And we have the perfect special guest to start this series of tastings. Welcome, Mr. Frank Hudson.
Hello, everybody. Pleasure to be here.
So Frank is involved in the Victoria Whisky Festival and has been for quite a few years now. How long have you been involved with the festival, Frank?
Yeah, I was trying to find that out. I'm trying to remember, Adam. I think about 10 years now.
10 years, wow. And the festival itself, this would have been the 16th festival, I believe, this year.
Yeah, that's correct. It started way back in 2006. And an interesting note, it was put together, really it was the idea of two people, Lawrence Graham and Ian Huey. And they had gone to a festival in Calgary, and they had been involved in whiskey clubs in Victoria. And when they saw what was happening in Calgary, they went, you know, we could do this in Victoria. Why don't we try it? And so Lawrence took the bull by the horn and said, okay, let's go. So the first festival, they thought that they would sell 75 tickets. And in an hour and a half, they sold almost 500 tickets.
Oh, wow.
Off.
That's very impressive. As someone who's not been in Victoria for as long as the festival's been around, I've only ever known it as this sort of giant successful thing that people line up around the block overnight to be able to get tickets for. And it's kind of hard to imagine it any other way. But that being said, it's a big festival. It's a very important festival, especially for a lot of the brands that are represented there every year. And it's a very important festival for the consumers as well. But it's also an important festival locally because it's entirely for charity, right? It's not a business. It's a charity.
It is, and I think we're really fortunate here in Victoria that Victoria has a very, very educated group of whiskey enthusiasts.
It certainly does.
Which is growing all the time. But I think the success of the festival is based on, the population here in Victoria who are informed, who like whiskey. It's a volunteer festival in that everybody who runs the festival is a volunteer. So we have 5 people on the committee, and then we have about 32 other volunteers who do all the other work. And all of the net money that comes in goes to charity. So it's just a fantastic group of things that come together to make it such a success.
Absolutely. And I think one of the other things that really makes it a success is that those organizers, you mentioned the committee of 5, they're all quite, not just into whiskey, but they're all part of the local whiskey community. It's not just, the whiskey festival isn't the only whiskey thing they do in a year. I think they're all involved in other clubs and other parts of the whole whiskey community as a whole.
That's very, very true. In fact, Lawrence Graham, who was, I consider the key person for the festival, he started most of the whiskey clubs, at least the initial whiskey clubs in Victoria. So he started the Victoria Single Malt Club, he started the Victoria Companions of the Quake, and with Ian started the Whiskey Festival back in 2006. We're really fortunate to have somebody like Lawrence here, because Lawrence, although he would never tell you this, is really whiskey royalty. He's been recognized around the world for his whiskey knowledge. And he, in fact, runs one of the best whiskey information sites on the web, Whiskey Intelligence.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's not only is it one of the best, it's one of the most long running as well. It's a great place to get information of what the whiskey scene was like, over a decade ago.
It is, in fact, at some of our other tastings for the companions, I've had a whiskey that I could get no information for. So I phoned him up and said, hey, Lawrence, what about this? And he always directs me to the page on the Whiskey Intelligence that I can find it.
That sounds about right. And you mentioned, of course, the Companions of the Quake. I'm wearing my pin because I'm actually a member of Frank's chapter of the Companions of the Quake. So Lawrence started up the Victoria chapter. Frank's now taken the reins, and I think doing a very good job of it throughout the pandemic. It's a tough time for whiskey, but it's it's an interesting time. It's certainly bred creativity within the whiskey industry, hasn't it?
Well, it has. And the wonderful thing about whiskey is whiskey's for sharing. And I've heard you say that many, many times, Adam. It truly is for sharing. And that's the one thing that I really miss in these COVID times is getting together with the personal sharing. But these Zoom tastings are a pretty good alternative considering the circumstance.
Absolutely. And it's an interesting thing in BC. We're always, it always feels like we're slightly tiptoeing around the liquor laws here. They're somewhat restrictive, but in other ways they're also quite open. So, I'm very grateful that there is the ability for independent whiskey clubs to actually function in some sense here in BC, especially right now.
Well, and just on that note, everybody thinks that BC is very, very restrictive in their liquor laws, but in Canadian terms, we're actually the second most liberal laws in the country. Alberta, then BC, and a lot of people don't recognize that. So you do have to give credit where credit is due, even though you would like to be better for us.
No, and that's absolutely the case. And as much as like liquor inspectors get a lot of bad press, especially in regards to whiskey sometimes here in BC, but they do a fantastic job on the other side of things. I mean, the main part of a liquor inspector's job is making sure that young people aren't drinking and getting hurt, and making sure that establishments aren't getting people to over service, and it's a very important thing for the province.
Yeah, and in terms of the Whiskey Festival, we have had a very good relationship with whiskey inspectors. They've been, very fair with us, and of course we operate a first class event. And I think
I like the Freudian slip there, by the way. You just called them whiskey inspectors. I like that.
Sorry,
the other liquor doesn't matter.
They've been very fair with us, and they've been very good with us. So I can't complain about them.
No, absolutely. So, I mean, as you mentioned, it has always been the case. I've always said it's not whiskey until it's shared. And with that in mind, we're going to share some whiskey right now, which is quite exciting. I'm very much looking forward to having a dram with you, Frank.
Me too.
So we're kicking off this very first in the series with I think a company that has been around and been involved with the festival for quite some time, a company called Rare Drams, and I think they represent a certain subsection of the whiskey industry here that I think a lot of people don't realize. I think there's an awful lot of course, supporting local, and of course we do that with our local distilleries. We're big fans here of Shelter Point and Divine and Macaloney. And even there's, I don't know if you heard the news this week, Frank, Moon Underwater just released their first single malt whiskey. I didn't even know they were making it. So yeah, I mean, supporting local is a very important thing. And everyone just assumes that everyone that, that isn't a local distillery, isn't a small business, isn't a small local business that needs help. And Rare Drams is, they're not a giant conglomerate. We're not talking Diageo. We're not talking Beam Suntory here. They're a very small company. I think there's maybe three, maybe four people involved in the whole company as a whole. And Stacey Kyle, who is the representative for Rare Drams out here in BC, does an amazing job bringing us some just spectacular whiskies. She's involved with bringing in the Douglas Lang and the Morrison range right now. And just because it wasn't made locally doesn't mean that it's not a local business that's involved in supplying the whiskey to us. And it's, whiskey doesn't magically appear here from Scotland. There's not some crazy portal that we can just pass bottles through. There's a lot of work that gets it onto the shelves here. And we are very, very grateful for all of the companies that put in all that effort, wherever they're based, however big or small they are.
And I'll put in a note for Stacey. Stacey and Rare Drams have been very, very good friends to the Victoria Whisky scene and to the Victoria Whisky Festival and the Victoria Highland Games. Anytime that we've asked that company for their support, they have done that. So thank you.
Absolutely,
Stacey.
And it is an honor to be presenting some of their whiskies, especially as a graphic designer. I'm very excited about this range because I've always been a fan of the Càrn Moor series, but I've always thought the branding was a little weak. Oh, have you seen the new bottles, Frank?
I have not.
So that's what they look like now. And I think that is such an amazing step up. And I'm really excited about the future of this company. And it's an interesting company as well, because they actually started in 1982. The original name was John Murray and Co. And they actually started off making cream liqueurs, which is a bit different to what they do now, although they do still make cream liqueurs. But yeah, they're very much focused on whiskeys now. Oh, isn't that just a beautiful bottle?
Oh, that's a nice looking bottle, all right.
Yeah. So they, in 2005, the reason that they really started changing their focus away from the whiskey liqueurs and into the actual whiskeys is they brought on some new owner managers, Kenny Mackay and Rob Starling, who used to be directors at Morrison Bowmore, and of course the former Morrison Bowmore chairman Brian Morrison, who also brought his son Jamie along. So that's some whiskey royalty names right there. Morrison Bowmore, of course, got bought out by Beam Suntory, but they used to own Bowmore, but also Auchentoshan and Glengarry. So they were quite a big company back in the day. All right. So the first whiskey we're trying here is a Longmorn, a whiskey which actually Frank and I had a conversation on Zoom not too long ago, because we had some fantastic Longmorns in a companion to the Quake tasting. But we also had an amazing Longmorn at the SNWS Outturn just a couple of weeks ago. So it's a distillery we're relatively familiar with recently. Let's take a look at the stats. So this is a 2009. It was bottled in 2020, making it aged for 11 years. It is one of 830 bottles. Longmorn, of course, is from the Speyside region, and it is from a first fill ex-bourbon barrel. Or, sorry, it's probably several ex-bourbon barrels. So this isn't a single cask, but it is a very, very small batch. If it's ex-bourbon barrels and it's 830, you'd suggest probably 4 barrels went into this. I mean, it's still very, very unique. And I know Frank had a nose ahead of time on this one. This is my first nosing. Ooh, yeah.
The nose on this is really floral.
Floral's a great word for it. It's fresh vanilla for me as well. It's vanilla pods and it's like a springtime garden, when the daffodils are coming up.
Absolutely. You can actually get some pineapple on there. Mm-hmm. Other fruits.
That's good call. Yeah. And it's, springtime is something we could do with right now. At time of recording, I think it's the coldest day on record in February in BC, possibly ever. So yeah, so the Ardmore is brought to us by Morrison Distillers, Morrison Scotch Whisky Distillers, which is a relatively new name. As I said, they actually started off as John Murray and Co. They changed their name to Morrison and Mackay in 2014, which is, of course, the combination of Kenny Mackay and Brian Morrison's surnames. But actually last year, Brian and Jamie Morrison took sole ownership of the company, and they've renamed it the Morrison Scotch Whisky Distillers, partially because they have their own distillery. Aberagi is distilling whiskey and will be releasing whiskey in the next few years, I assume. So I think they've named it Scotch Whisky Distillers, or rather than just Morrison Whiskies or something, in anticipation of their own distilleries releases. But I'm sure, even though they've got their own whiskey maturing, I'm sure they're not going to be getting out of the single malt range in terms of their independent bottlings. And hopefully they'll be continuing their Old Perth as well, which is something else that's, of course, the Victoria Whisky Festival is quite familiar with, after having our own version of Old Perth for the festival last year.
Now we did. Do we have any of that left, Adam?
Yeah, I think we've got about 5 cases. We've got like 30-ish bottles. Yeah, I've actually got a bottle behind me right now. There you go. So yeah, we do have some of this one left. Frank was on the panel that helped me decide yay or nay on the sample. And I think you'll agree, actually, Frank, that the whiskey that we ended up with was actually a little different from the sample we received. Still very much enjoyed it. But a word of warning, if you are the kind of person that doesn't like gin flavors, this is not for you. It is 100% whiskey, and it's a blend of actually 4 malts. It's a fantastic blend, but the nose is especially botanical. It's very foresty and does remind you a little bit of a gin. Which does dissipate after it's oxidized for a while. But yeah, a beautiful whiskey, however, a little bit divisive for those who don't like gin. But if you do like gin, this is fantastic. And if you don't mind gin, this is still fantastic.
Yes, it has. When you take the first nosing of it, you get the strong smell of juniper berry.
Yeah, which is amazing. We were trying to find out for ages where that was coming from. There was theories that maybe, the bottling line had a gin or something. We got in touch with them like, no, they don't bottle gin in the place where that was bottled. So it's, it's not part of the bottling line. It's literally just the 4 whiskeys that were blended together happened to have all come together to create a gin. They had Glenfarclas in there. They had Kalila in there. Apparently, Kalila actually is well known for having a juniper note, especially its the sort of lighter peated form, which is something I didn't know until that. And that's actually something I got from a gentleman I met at the Whiskey Festival a few years ago, the author of the Whiskey Atlas, a book which I have right here, Dave Broom, who's, I think, probably been to the festival several times, hasn't he, Frank?
Yes, he has. He has, and actually, if people are watching in Victoria, I'm not sure if it's still on. He narrates a film that was just at the Victoria Whisky Festival that actually is really, really good. So if you get a chance to see it.
I know it's currently on at time of recording. I don't know if it's still going to be available by the time this video goes out over YouTube, but I'm looking forward to seeing it over the weekend, actually.
Yeah, it's well worth the couple hours it takes to watch it.
Nice. And if you're a long-time viewer of this channel, a couple of hours of watching people talk about whiskey is nothing to you guys. So,
just to finish up on Adam's comments about the Victoria Whisky Festival, Old Perth. Once you do get past the nosing of it, it actually is a very nice whiskey, and it's reasonably priced. So I had to finish.
Absolutely. That. And it's still on 10% off right now. I'm going to keep that discount running through the duration of this collaboration that we're doing with the festival through these tastings. So that's going to be 10% off for the entire time. And yeah, I just took a sip of this Longmorn, and that's really quite something. It tastes like apricot custard.
Oh.
So interesting thing about the Càrn Moor series, they have a couple of different sort of levels of Càrn Moor. The level we're talking here is the strictly limited, which is their not single cask level, but step below that, very small batch level. And they actually release all of these at 47.5. So it's not cask strength either. It has been reduced a little bit, but 47.5 is still a very, very good, strong ABV for these kind of whiskies. I certainly don't feel like I'm missing out too much on this whiskey, especially for the price, which we'll get into soon.
No, I totally agree with you, Adam. This is a very, very nice mouthfeel.
Yeah, it's those first fill ex-bourbon casks really giving it a big butteriness, I think. So, a little bit about Longmorn. So after cutting his teeth at the Glendronach distillery, John Duff went ahead and started designing distilleries, starting with Glenlossie in 1876, before he eventually relocated to South Africa, where he tried to bring Scotch whiskey distillation techniques to the country of South Africa. That failed magnificently, but upon return to Scotland, his failure turned to success when he founded Longmorn, I believe in 1893. Which was a terrible time to build a distillery. The early 1890s, there was a huge boom in distilleries, and then followed by a huge bust. And there was a whole sort of, I think it was called the Patterson debacle. Debacle is not the right word, but I think it's a fun word. And the vast majority of distilleries that started in the late 1800s around then all went bankrupt or closed down, if not for good, at least for a few decades. This is not one of them, though. Longmorn managed to actually survive really well. They started a sister distillery to Longmorn shortly after it opened. I think it was Benriach, I think, that was the sister distillery to Longmorn. And although Benriach did close down for a while, Longmorn continued to produce whiskey, which is quite cool. In fact, Benriach, although they closed the distillery side down, it was still an active maltings. So they were actually using that as the maltings house for Longmorn. There's a little peppery on the back end now as well. That's very nice. Another interesting thing about Longmorn is it is the location of, I would say probably the most influential training for Masataka Takatsuru, who is the sort of the father of Japanese whiskey. He studied at Longmorn for quite some time before heading back to Japan to really start the whiskey industry in Japan. And when he finally got his very own distillery, Yoichi, up in Hokkaido, it was Longmorn that he used as sort of the blueprint. Not only did they literally use the blueprint of the still and actually recreate Longmorn stills in Hokkaido, if you actually look at the distillery, it's almost designed the same way. It's got the same white and red trim. It's a really quite a stunning place. One that I was hoping to visit quite recently and obviously haven't. You ever thought about visiting distilleries in Japan, Frank?
I have, as a matter of fact, and like you, my travel plans have been put on hold for a little while.
Well, we were both planning on going to Scotland last year, I think, weren't we?
We were. Actually last year, yes.
Yeah. It's been a year now. Wow. That's very nice. So these days, Longmorn is not very commonly found in BC. There is, I think, the 16-year-old still available internationally, but I've not seen it on the shelves here in anywhere in Canada for a long time. We did have an 18-year-old that was supposed to theoretically be a airport exclusive last year. That sold out relatively quickly, and unfortunately unable to bring it back. So outside of the independent bottlings, the only sort of official bottling that you'll find Longmorn in these days is the Chivas blends. So if you have the Chivas 12 or something, there's a certain amount of Longmorn that goes into that.
Or if you take advantage of the Scotch Malt Whisky Society, occasionally they'll come up with Longmorns.
Yeah, you'll see SNWS Longmorns definitely, and Longmorns like this Càrn Moor, which is, I can't imagine going to be available for very long. To be honest, we only have 5 bottles, and the price is pretty spot on. This is 11 years old, I think, wasn't it? Yeah, 11 years old. It is regular price $160.78, and with your 10% off discount, which all Dram Association members are eligible for the next little while, probably until it's sold out, because I don't think it's going to last long, is $144.70, which is incredible. And if it doesn't last very long, and if it does last a little while, and the discount is, the discount has expired, you'll still get a 5% discount for all Dram Association members, or if you're a Dram Association premium member, you can still obviously get your 10% discount, which you can have on any bottle. So yeah, that's a stunning little release, and that is available at strathliquor.com right now. So yeah, take a look in the search bar, search for Longmorn or Càrn Moor, and you'll hopefully see it pop up. And if you don't see it pop up, it probably means it's sold out already.
This is a really drinkable expression. This is really, really nice, and for that price, it's great.
And drinkable is the perfect word, actually, Frank, because the whole idea behind the strictly limited range for Càrn Moor, because this was actually the second range that they released. They released, what was their original one called? They still have it around as well. I've got it written down here somewhere. Celebration of the Cask. That's their single cask range. Celebration of the Cask is their cask strength single cask version. The strictly limited range, the whole idea is it's supposed to be a day drinker. Well, not necessarily a day drinker, but a very drinkable day-to-day dram that you don't have to feel guilty about drinking. Yeah, that's a very good expression. And I have to say, I'm very, very in love with the new branding here. This is a beautiful bottle. And also, I didn't realize until I actually just poured then, because obviously I opened this a couple of days ago so I could make sure that Frank could have a sample. So I didn't take the foil off just now, but when I did, I realized that it looks like it's just a nice little foil cap, but actually it's a ring, and they actually have like a little inset in the cork as well, which is absolutely beautiful. And actually, it even says Morrison Scotch Whisky Distillery around the outside edge of the cork. Like they've gone to great lengths on their branding here. It's absolutely beautiful. All right, so number 1 was the Longmorn 2009. Beautiful start. But we have 4 whiskies here today, and as much as I do enjoy a good first fill bourbon cask, it's the time of the year when sherry cask whiskey is particularly favorable to my palate right now. And we have 3 sherry cask whiskies coming up. The first of all, we have a Manic Moor, which is not a distillery I'm overly familiar with, to be honest. So yeah, have you had many Manic Moors in your time, Frank?
You know, I haven't. I think I've only had one or two through the SMWS.
I think that's pretty much my experience of them as well. An interesting enough distillery. It's one of many distilleries that are sort of, they're the big Diageo distilleries, that almost all of it goes into a blend. It's known apparently for its very light spirit, so it goes into the blends to bulk up the more lighter floral side of life. In this case, however, being a PX sherry hogshead maturation, not finished, but a full maturation for 13 years, I don't think it's going to be that light and floral. I think the cask, especially looking at the color, I think the cask is going to have quite an influence on this one. Not as much as an influence, however, as the most recent, I think, official bottling of Manic Moor, and probably the reason you don't see it anymore, because it was pretty controversial. And a whiskey that I've never tried, but kind of want to, out of a weird, bizarre intrigue. Did you ever try the Loch Dew, Frank?
I did not.
The black whiskey.
I did not.
It came out in 1996. Apparently, it's really popular in Scandinavia. But yeah, it was a whiskey where they said they used like a double charred version of a bourbon cask in it, and I think in reality they just put a hell of a lot of coloring in it, but it was literally black. You were drinking a black whiskey, which sounds especially bizarre, seeing as, from what I understand, as I said, Manic Moor is supposed to be quite a light, floral, fragrant whiskey. So having a light, floral, fragrant whiskey that's also black is strange. Yeah,
because Diageo used this in their Flora and Fauna series.
Oh yes, of course, yeah. Which was, I think, the first time it was released as a single malt before the the Loch Dew incident.
Yeah,
it's a relatively new distillery as well. It only started in 1971, and an interesting link with the first whiskey here today. It's actually a sister distillery for Glenlossie, which of course was designed by the same guy that designed Longmorn, which is a nice little link. That is a hell of a color, though. It's a burnt orange in my glass right here. That's lovely. So yeah, Manic Moor Distillery, 2007 from PX Sherry Hogsheads. Again, a Speyside whiskey. This one, they got 1,551 bottles out of it. So hogsheads, probably around 350. So probably 5 casks went into this one. 13 years old, again, bottled in 2020. And it's interesting getting these whiskeys that are bottled in 2020, because I think it's going to be a rarity that you'll see whiskeys either distilled or bottled in 2020 going forward, because there was drastically less than normal. Ooh, rum and raisin ice cream on the nose for me, Frank. What are you getting?
Oh, how about some nuts, some walnut?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the squirrels would like this one.
Oh, gosh, yeah. This is another really nice dram, Adam.
Yeah, the nose on this is stunning. It's you said nuts, and the first nut that came to mind actually for me wasn't walnuts, but pecans or however you pronounce it.
I get a bit of maple as well.
Maple, beautiful. Yeah, like a maple candied pecan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Oh, that's lovely. Yeah, I honestly don't have much to say about the distillery, Manic Moor, just simply because I don't think there's really that much that can be said about it. It's very, very rarely seen as a single malt, even as an independently bottled single malt. Oh, it's a little minty. Ooh.
Oh, it's nice.
That is a delightful palate.
Nice and oily.
Yeah.
Oh.
Ooh. Yeah, if you're a fan of PX style whiskies, this is PX without being overpoweringly PX. It doesn't mention, I think, first fill or second fill. Yeah, it just says PX sherry hogsheads. I would hazard a guess that it's probably 1 or 2 first fill and the rest a refill, because it feels balanced. It's not a sherry bomb by any means, but it is very sherry influenced.
What's the ABV on this, Adam?
So this is again 47.5.
40, okay. And this is 13 years?
Did I say 13? Yeah, 13 years. Yeah, 2007. I feel bad that I only got 5 of these because I'm fairly certain we could have easily sold more, especially as it's actually exactly the same price as the Longmorn as well.
I think these are going to go very quickly.
Yeah, I think I will say this is for sale right now at strathliquor.com. It is $160.78 in regular price. So for our members that get 10% off, that is $144.70. Becoming a member is very easy. You can do so right now for free. You can even get a discount at the same time as becoming a member by clicking on the Dram Association option in the header at the top of the website. It'll give you everything you need to be able to sign up for your discount there. And yeah, you get 10% on all featured whiskies and 5% off everything else, which is not bad for free, eh?
Adam, while you're drinking out of that glass, which I notice is a 2021 Victoria Whisky Festival glass.
I'm glad you noticed.
So one of the things that I didn't mention earlier is, well, I did mention it, but people don't realize the amount of money that we've given to various charities over the years. And that figure is, I think, well over $400,000 now. Ooh. Last year, wow. In 2020, we were able to distribute, I think, about $40,000 to various charities, which are all listed on our VictoriaWhiskyFestival.com website. A lot of the money went to the Q's TLC for kids. There's some that went for Crime Stoppers, but it went to like Wounded Warriors. We try to give the bulk of the money to kids charities, anything to support kids. So I know this year, well, the other part before I say that, because I'm sure Adam's going to say something about the fundraising side in a few minutes. But one of the other reasons that makes our festival so successful is we're very socially conscious or very socially responsible in that the Saturday night consumer tasting affair, we give people rides home. So there's absolutely no reason whatsoever for a person who's partaking in enjoying the whiskeys that are there to drive home, because we provide a ride home. No matter where you are in the Capital Regional District, we'll get you home.
It's like a free Uber ride. It's great. Thankfully I actually live about a 7-minute walk away from where the festival's held every year, so I haven't personally needed to use it. But it's very good to know that it's there. I'm pretty sure that our joint friend Pat has used it a couple of times.
Well, the other thing about the ride is you never know who you're going to get for a driver. You're going to get a radio personality or a chief of police, a retired chief of police, people you don't normally get a chance to talk to.
If retired chiefs of police are some of the drivers, then you best be on your best behavior if you're planning on getting one of those rides home next year.
I'll reserve my
speaking
comments.
of next year, I assume that the intention is to try and have a festival next year?
Yes. We're hoping that the vaccinations, people get vaccinated, we reach that point where we're once again able to gather. But yes, we are planning on having that festival in January of 2022. Beautiful.
I look forward to it. It's a lot of work that weekend, especially for yourself. But it's so rewarding.
Well, it is, and everybody, like all 5 of the committee and all of the volunteers, so look forward to it, because yes, it's volunteer, but we all get a ton out of it in terms of our own sort of whiskey journey, and of course being able to help those less fortunate through the charity donations that we give. But it's a pretty spectacular event, and we do miss it. I must say though that last month is the first year in 10 years that I haven't had a lot of stress in January.
Well, I mean, there's probably still some stress being that we're in a global pandemic, but it says a lot about the stress of the festival that it was less.
That's true.
Too right. Yeah, I mean, I've personally been involved with the festival now for 5 years, mostly through my capacity as the whiskey buyer for the Strath. We've managed to put a pop-up shop at the festival for the last 4 years, which has been excellent. But I know from the very beginning, the Strath has been involved in the festival long before I was involved with the Strath. And one of the things that we always do is we're involved in procuring the Glencairn glasses, as every festival always has a branded Glencairn, so you can collect them all and keep track of them. And as you can see, the 2021 Glencairns actually did get made. So you can actually take part in the festival from home in your special festival glass. And the way we're doing that this year is in conjunction with these series of tastings, which have a charity component to them as well. We're also selling off the remaining glassware for charity. So you can go to strathliquor.com right now, and you can search Glencairn in the little search bar at the top, or it should be pretty on the main page as well. Every month, we're choosing a different local charity, and the proceeds that we get from the Glencairns and through our donation button on the website, and also through some of the donations that we're getting from some of the agencies and companies and the distilleries who are able to donate right now, and there's no stress on any of the companies involved. We're not asking every company to donate anything towards these digital tastings, but for those who can, all of the donations, of course, will be passed straight on to charity. So yeah, right now you'll be able to get the first batch of the 2021 Victoria Whisky Festival glasses for $10 each, and all of the proceeds this month are going to a very special charity. As Frank mentioned, the festival always tries to do children's charities. And we're starting off with the Victoria Child Abuse Prevention and Counselling Centre, which is formerly known as the Mary Manning Centre. So yeah, all of the proceeds for the glassware and all of the donations from February's tastings will be going to the former Mary Manning Centre, the Victoria Child Abuse Prevention and Counselling Centre. Beautiful. And with that, it's time for some peat. We've got 4 whiskies, 2 unpeated and 2 peated, and I think Frank knows me fairly well. We've shared a hotel room on a couple of occasions. We've swapped stories. We know each other's background, and if I was to ask Frank what my favorite distillery is, he'd probably tell you.
I'd probably tell you Ardmore.
Yeah. I mean, having a favorite anything is relatively difficult for me. On any given day, I might change my mind, but Ardmore is always in my top 3 at the very least. It's most likely my favorite distillery of all time. I just love it. I really do. So yeah, we're going for an Ardmore right here. Lovely. So this, again, is a Càrn More Strictly Limited. So it's being bottled at 47.5. It is a small batch. It is a 2011 Ardmore from the Highlands region. It is a mix of PX and Oloroso sherry casks, which is always music to my ears. As much as I love sherry casks, I love Oloroso whiskies, I love PX whiskies. I love them even more when they're combined because you just get such more variety and depth of flavor out of them. This is 1,272 bottles of this were made. It is 9 years old, again bottled in 2020, bottled at 47.5. Sherry cask Ardmore, something that I've only had a couple of times in my life. Yeah, really looking forward to this one. In fact, I can tell you right now, if I like it, there's only going to be 4 bottles available to buy instead of 5 because I'm going to buy one. It's been a hard year. I'm pulling myself. I'm doing myself a favor this time. I don't usually do that. I try and get customers to have first dibs, but it's a personal favorite, and it's my birthday next month. I deserve it. Ooh.
I don't think you're going to be disappointed, Adam.
Oh, no, me neither. No, I think there's going to be 0 disappointment with this whiskey.
Oh, nice mix of smoke.
Yeah.
And sherry.
So the one key note with Ardmore, one of the reasons I really like it, the smoke that comes across is it's very different to a coastal smoke. It's the Highland peat that they use in this. It comes across much more as a wood smoke, and particularly for Ardmore, what I get is applewood smoke. It reminds me of being in Frank's backyard when he's got the big green egg going.
It's actually a good analogy.
So yeah, Ardmore, again, was another distillery that started in the late 1800s that I believe managed to survive the whole time. I don't think Ardmore ever closed down. It might have done, but I choose not to acknowledge that if it did. It was started by Adam Teacher in 1898, and it's located just outside of Aberdeen. And it was made for the sole purpose of making a peated malt for the Teacher's Blend, which is a particularly popular blend in the United Kingdom, and one that I always try and make sure we have in stock here at the Strath, because it's one of the lesser expensive whiskies that I truly believe is a fantastic quality. And they're a real throwback classic style distillery. They were actually one of the very last distilleries to use coal-fired stills before it was deemed not proper anymore in Scotland. They actually swapped to steam in 2001. I think they were the second last distillery to do so. And when they swapped, they didn't just swap straight to steam. They actually went a little bit high tech in their efforts to try and remain old school, which is a bit of a weird statement. But yeah, they've actually created a system on their stills that randomizes the hotspots that would have occurred if they were using coal. Because that's the main difference between coal and steam, is coal doesn't burn as evenly. It would have little pockets where it was more, there was more density to the fuel. So it would have hotspots, which would create movement inside the still, which was an integral part of the distillery's flavor. I'm lucky enough that I've tried several Ardmores now from before 2001. And although there is a little bit of a difference, I have managed to try one from 2000 and compared it directly to 2002. And I think they've done really, really well at still managing to capture that throwback style. This one, of course, being from 2011, is definitely steam. Oh, that smells just gorgeous. It's, I get the wood smoke. It's almost sort of brambly blackberry as well.
I was going to say that. In fact, I've beaten you to a taste of it. And it reminds me of a blackberry smoked salmon that I make.
Ooh. You've been getting creative. I like it. Blackberry smoked salmon, Frank. Ooh, lovely. Yeah, that is a gorgeous nose on it. Let's go in for a taste as well. Oh, and I think Frank's going to like this one as well, because there's a little subtle sort of cigar tobacco note there.
Yeah, all three that we've had so far have been fabulous.
With the smoked salmon, the smoked meat, and the apple wood, and now the cigar tobacco. We've not been naming these whiskeys like we normally do in the Dram Association when we have group tastings, when we give them all a nickname. But if this was a nickname, this is Frank's backyard.
You can see my humidor behind me.
Yes, perfect. Oh, that is just lovely. So yeah, there's 4 of these available, not 5.
What a surprise.
Yeah. So yeah, as I mentioned, Ardmore traditionally was made specifically for the teacher's blend, and that's no different today. However, they do have a single malt, an official bottling single malt available now. But it's a weird thing, They started in 1898, but it wasn't until 2006, 2007 even, that they actually released their first single malt, which is just bonkers. A whiskey this good has been sorely neglected in terms of being a single malt offering. As much as I do enjoy teachers, I'd rather have Ardmore on its own, I've got to be honest. But yeah, it became a single malt after being bought out in 2006, along with its sister distillery, by company, not by location. They're very different locations. It's very intertwined with Laphroaig. They've been under the same ownership for a long time. And Laphroaig and Ardmore were bought out in 2006 by Beam, who are now Beam Suntory. And it's actually that interesting thing with that very first release, and the link with Laphroaig there, is that first release was called the Ardmore Traditional Cask, and it actually used ex-Laphroaig quarter casks in its maturation. So Highland smoke with a little bit of coastal smoke too. Potentially being the first distillery to really market the fact that it's using an ex-Islay cask to impart a little bit of smoke into the whiskey as well. Something that's done relatively often now. We had the Cavalan peaty cask. We've had the Shelter Point Smoke Point. We even had an S&WS recently, Bal Blair, that was done in an ex-Bowmore cask, which was quite incredible. But yeah, this is just full sherry cask, and yeah, this is gorgeous. The amazing thing is that I can say that one of the reasons I'm so guns at the ready to buy this one is I can actually afford it. Its regular price is $130.34, which is just insane. So it's with 10% off. It's actually $117.31, and those 4 remaining bottles are for sale right now at strathliquor.com, probably for a matter of seconds.
Yeah, I think there's only 3 left.
Perfect.
So
that's good.
Yeah, before we move on, I just want to just finish up a comment you made about the Strath and your contribution to the Whiskey Festival. Adam was selling himself a bit short there. Adam does an awful lot for the Whiskey Festival on a volunteer basis. He makes all the tasting mats. If you look at these wonderful glasses, he does the logos for us. He presents when called upon. He's been absolutely fantastic in giving his time and expertise to the festival, and we appreciate it.
Thank you, Frank. It's honestly an honor to do so. And the logo, which I redesigned a couple of years ago, and I think this is the third year now it's been used. I always get a kick out of when I drink from one of the glasses at home. You're like, oh, I made this logo, which is fun because I've got the Dram Association ones now as well, which I also designed the logo for. But the logo for this, if you can't tell, was inspired by the now previous Scotch Malt Whisky Society logo, where instead of the vaults, it actually has the image of the hotel, the Hotel Grand Pacific, where it is where the festival takes part every year but this year. Lovely. So final whiskey. We've had two Speysides and a Highland, and it's finally time to go coastal. We're having a whiskey here which is called Williamson. Williamson, a term that was often used, especially by Morris and Mackay, who are of course now Morrison, Scotch whisky distillers. Used a lot for their teaspoon malts when they couldn't legally say where it was actually from. Although this one actually just outright says distilled at Laphroaig Distillery, but they still call it a Williamson. Interestingly enough, I think partially to honour their past bottlings and to tie the link, because they've actually released a Williamson, I think 4 years in a row now, each year getting 1 year older. I meant to bring it with me to be able to show you, but my fiance Kristen has a bottle from 3 or 4 years ago with the old branding. It's ugly as hell, but the whiskey is delicious. I think it was a Valentine's Day gift 3 years ago, maybe, that she's still got a little bit left. But yeah, it's become an annual tradition now. We've been waiting for our Càrn Moor Williamson. So you know why it's called Williamson? Oh, I certainly do, and that's going to be what we talk about here, because I think Laphroaig has been talked about to death now. Everyone and their son knows about Laphroaig, but Williamson is the name was chosen specifically to honour a very special person. And do you have anything to say about that, Frank?
No, you're going to do it. I'm glad you're going to do it.
All right, perfect. So Williamson refers to Bessie Williamson. And Bessie Williamson is a fantastic human being who I have the utmost respect for. And I was actually watching an old documentary on Islay recently from the tourist perspective of Islay. And she just popped up on screen. I was like, oh my God, I'm actually seeing like a recording of Bessie Williamson in person. It's amazing. She's a bit of a hero of mine. She was a failed art student from Glasgow. Which is an amazing start to the story. She after finally, I say failed, she did get a degree, but it took her twice as long as she expected. After getting it, she took a temporary summer holiday position on Islay as a typist for Laphroaig in 1934. It didn't work out particularly temporary, however. 10 years later, after the distillery was reopened, and she was with them pretty much the entire time, apart from when they were temporarily closed due to World War II. Actually, during World War II, it was used as barracks and an ammunition storage facility. But when it reopened, Bessie was named the manager, and she was the first ever female manager of a Scotch whisky distillery, and weirdly enough also, as far as I can tell, the only one in the 20th century. We didn't get another female distillery manager until the 21st century, where thankfully now we have several, which is a great thing for the industry. Yeah, really interesting woman. She actually married a Canadian, funnily enough, in 1961. Bizarrely, for a person that is so intertwined with the history of Islay single malt Scotch whiskey, she not only married a Canadian, but she married a Canadian whose favorite drink was rum and Pepsi, which is kind of weird. But maybe thanks to her partnership, her international maritals is probably partially partially responsible for putting Laphroaig on that international map. She had this goal of having Laphroaig break free from being purely a blending ingredient, and I believe it was the first Islay malt to be released as a single malt internationally. Something that today is paid dividends, as Laphroaig is the only peated whiskey in the top 10 best-selling single malts in the world, and deservedly so. It's fantastic. Almost all of their whiskey these days goes into their official bottling single malts. Very little goes into blending, and I think even less now goes into independent bottle lugs. And as such, the price has just gone through the roof for a lot of Laphroaigs, which, it's the price of whiskey is always an interesting thing, because as with the price of anything, a whiskey's worth is basically determined by the people who are willing to buy it. And people keep showing their willingness to spend a premium price on Laphroaig, and I don't see that ending anytime soon. It's not like one of those whiskeys like Mortlach did a few years ago, where they artificially try and make it a premium whiskey. All of a sudden, it's twice the price it used to be. No, Laphroaig has just steadily increased because people legitimately are willing to pay that much for it, and I think that's a good thing for the industry. And if you want an inexpensive alternative to Laphroaig, they do exist, and that's completely, you don't have to get Laphroaig. There's plenty of other whiskies out there, but for those who just love that very unique band-aidy hospital on fire flavor, that's something quite special. And Bessie Williamson is particularly special in terms of these series of tastings we're doing right now. I don't know if you knew this, Frank, but she was actually a huge philanthropist in Islay. She would start a bunch of local charities. She was involved in a lot of the social village hall kind of things. And actually, she was so well known for it. In 1963, she was actually given the Order of St. John's for her charity work.
I did not know that. That's interesting.
It's pretty cool, isn't it?
Yeah, well deserved.
Yeah. So yeah, cheers to Bessie, and cheers to all of the women in whiskey who have followed in Bessie Williamson's footsteps. And in fact, to the female member of the Victoria Whisky Festival board, cheers to Frederica, who I'm sure is watching. Oh. Yeah, that's good. So this is not actually being released right now, this whiskey. Don't worry, there's still some for sale. But this was actually released several months ago in secret a little bit, just before Christmas for our most... For our premium Dram Association members who pay the most attention, we actually secretly put this up as a premium exclusive. So you could only really see it if you actually went to our website and went to the Dram Association premium page. And this is something we'll do off and on occasionally. We'll do these little shadow releases. So the people who happen to be checking the Dram Association premium page have already had a chance to purchase this bottle. And then I took it off again a little bit afterwards once we'd gotten through about half of the stock. So I think we have 4 or 5 bottles left. I'm not entirely sure exactly how many we've got right now, but we have already sold some. We got 12 of this one because I knew it would be pretty well sought after.
Another great round.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's got that classic Laphroaig nose. The hospital on fire is but actually it's like one of those wartime hospital ships.
It is, but it's really complex. Like it's a great dram to finish on, Adam. This has been a great 4 whiskeys to try.
Yeah, I was very excited when we got these. There's are you getting a bit of cinnamon on the palate there, Frank? That's one of the things I'm getting across here.
Yeah. Probably
mostly to the Oloroso Sherry Hogshead. So yeah, this is not only Laphroaig, but an Oloroso cask Laphroaig, one of 1,139 bottles from hogsheads again. So potentially 3 or 4 hogsheads went into that. This is aged for 10 years, bottled in 2020 as well. Yeah, and I'm so glad that they managed to keep up this annual tradition of a Càrn or Williamson, even through the pandemic. They actually have, I didn't realize this, they actually have official tasting notes on the back of the bottles. This one says a big punch of peat reek, tarred ropes, and seaside bonfire notes with dark fruits on the finish. Yeah, that's about spot on.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. I think that the graphics are very nice on those bottles.
Beautiful, isn't it? And I feel slightly bad for our Old Perth because they've actually redone the graphics on the Old Perth in the same shade bottle, and it looks incredible. So, I don't think this is bad by any means, but the new Old Perth is also beautiful. And speaking of which, we will have a guest presenter maybe next month or the month after, who will be joining us from Morrison Distillers, who will be joining us for the launch of the brand new Old Perth expressions here in British Columbia. So we will be welcoming some special guests from Scotland in a future video.
And you're planning on doing those as part of the charity series, Adam?
Absolutely. So actually, I was going to mention this in this video. In the teaser for this series, I mentioned that we'd be doing it for at least 2 months, I think. I've had such an amazing response from importers and from people wanting to be involved in this, that this actually might continue well into June, to be honest. We're going to be doing 3 or 4 of these tastings every month now. We were a little late starting in February, as I should have learnt by now. It takes a lot more effort to do a tasting when there's more than one person involved in it. Usually with these things, it's just me sat in a room and I can do it whenever I want. I can do it at midnight on a Thursday. But when I've actually got to arrange time with other very, very busy people. So my apologies for all of these coming out in the later half of February. Hopefully they actually have come out in February and we're not on March saying this on YouTube right now. But yeah, whenever they release, we'll be having several months of these, and we'll be doing 3 or 4 a month. Ranging from things like this, where we're presenting one of our favorite companies and some new releases. We'll be presenting some whiskey tastings from some much larger companies. We're actually going to be doing a Beam tasting soon with Ray Daniels from Jim Beam. That's going to be fantastic. We're exploring the friends of Basil Hayden, so we're going to have five different whiskeys on that theme. We've got Michter's coming up soon. We're doing some incredible things down the line. We're going to be actually, I believe, if all goes well, we will be drinking something from the 1960s on this show, and not only drinking some from the 1960s, but actually being able to use that as a charity driver as well, which is going to be really cool. Hopefully, everyone who's enjoying this from home will be picking up glasses or donating through our website, or being involved in some of the private whiskey clubs who I'm joining forces with to be able to let people enjoy these whiskeys at home alongside the video, which is something that we're legally not allowed to do at the Strath, but thankfully through the liquor laws here, independent whiskey clubs are allowed to do so. So we will be working closely with some local independent whiskey clubs on that, who will also be helping us raise money for the charities. I look forward to seeing, when the dust is settled, how much we're able to do.
Well, on that note, I'll issue a little challenge to everybody out there. So through the Victoria Companions, we did offer the 2021 whiskey glasses, and I am about to present the Gold Tree Food Bank with a check for $1,000 through the sale of those glasses. So there's the start.
Excellent. Yeah. And that's hopefully we'll be doing something very similar every month for the next few months. And it might well happen that, but we end up running out of glasses long before we run out of tastings to do. So we might end up doing tastings in May and June in collaboration, theoretically, with the Highland Games as well. Who knows? But we will be doing a lot of charity work and tastings, and working with companies to bring you special guests, just like Frank Hudson here, who has been a fantastic special guest in today's tasting. Thank you very much for joining us. He's joining us all the way from Langford, which is I'm not entirely sure where that even is. It's somewhere near South Africa, isn't it?
Well, the UK version is Langfordshire.
Langfordshire, yes, the Sheriff of Langfordshire. Beautiful. So there's one last important thing to do before we close up this tasting, and that is let you guys know that the Williamson, what is left of the Williamson is available right now at strathliquor.com. Regular price $186.87, down with your 10% discount to $168.18. With that, all 4 of these beautiful Càrn Moors have been released into the wild, and I'm very intrigued to see how quickly these go, because they're all very strict. They're strictly limited. See what I did there? But yeah, it has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much once again to Stacey Kyle for bringing these whiskies in and her continuous support on the Victoria Whisky Festival. Thank you to Frank, who is representing the Victoria Whisky Festival here. I'll see you in the next tasting, and hopefully I'll see you in person at next year's Victoria Whisky Festival. Thank you, Frank.
Thank you, and thanks for all your help.
No problem. Good night, everybody. I'll see you next time.
Find your way home. Your